Since it's your first class, we thought that we should keep it simple and short so that you can have an orientation and also can get along with the subject. So it's a very small topic within itself, and moreover I am also extremely sick today, so we'll make it fast. Okay, and also we don't have the projector and board, so we'll try to learn from these artificial ones only. But in forensic we need real ones, because in NAT you can still learn from the artificial ones, because you just have to only learn the markings and everything. But in forensic, that's identification which is only possible with the real ones, not possible from the artificial ones, and it's of no use. You don't identify artificial people, you identify real people. No? Okay. So today the topic of our practical is sex identification through bones. Okay. Now first of all, what do you mean by the term identification? What do you mean by the term identification? It's determining the individuality of a person. Okay. You can pin pictures of his copy. It's determining the individuality of a person. Okay. So, what do you think? As of now, you have some kind of orientation about the subject of FMT. You have your full-fledged lecture or identification as well. But for your understanding, I'm just giving some briefing about the identification. Since you have already an idea about the subject, you know what forensic medicine and toxicology is all about. So you must know what is identification and what is the purpose of identification in this subject. What is the purpose of identification in this subject? Why do we need to identify anything, or what is the purpose? Where do we need to identify? As I said, identification is determining the individuality of a person. Okay. Suppose you are a forensic doctor working in some scenario. Okay, working with crime branch or anything. Okay, and any person who dies, his family knows about it, and they go and cremate the body. Okay, according to the rituals and everything. But if some person finds some body randomly floating at some drain or some canal, or just buried in some forest, or burnt and thrown away. Okay, so in such cases, local people find some half burnt body or some dead remains, some bone remains of a person, and they report it to the nearest police station. No, you have all seen Crime Patrol. How does it happen? Some localites, they see a body floating in a river, or they see a body half burnt in a forest, or they see some bony remains floating in some river or something, and then they would do what? They inform the police about it, because it's not natural. Any family whose a member has died, they won't just throw away the body like that. No, so it's unnatural. It's not natural to be a body to be found like that, just like that, randomly somewhere. So so these people, some local people will spot it and then report to the police. Now what does police and what will the police will come and do? They'll try to do what? For identifying the crime, they have to identify the body. They have to identify the body. No, so it's first it is important to identify the body. So what is the need of identification? Not only in criminal scenarios like this, but also in civil scenarios also we need identification. Like you have somebody at their family, they have a property dispute with their family member, with their relatives. Okay, so they're in civil cases or something, they have to have an identification, a proper absolute identification of their name, age, everything. No, uh, for being a citizen of this country also we need to be identified somewhere in our portals and everything. So identification, it is just determining the individuality of a person. It can be of two types, absolute and partial. So what are the parameters of identification? And it is used in both civil and criminal purposes. Okay, so what are the parameters of identification? Parameters of identification. Okay, when we talk about parameters of identification, we have presumptive and we have definitive. What do we have? Presumptive and definitive. Now definitive is what? We know for sure and certain that this is this person. So what are the means that we can definitely say that this is the identification of this person? By dactylography, by DNA fingerprinting, by tattoo. No, these are birthmarks. These are the things that are definite parameters of identification. Okay, tattoo, dactylography, DNA fingerprinting. Okay, so these are definitive forms of identification. Now, what are presumptive form of identification? These are sex, age, stature, and race. Okay, and race. These four are presumptive, and these are rest are definitive. Okay. Now here today's our topic is presumptive identification, and that too specifically sex identification. From what? Now sex can be identified by so many means, by bones, by teeth. But today first class we are going to learn sex identification from bony remains. Okay. Now when we talk about sex identification, what are the various types of sex? Last class I told you about, your class only or no, I don't know, what is the difference between sex and gender? What do you understand about sex and what do you understand about gender?
Gender means only male and female, but sex means it includes people of
No, just the opposite. Yes, sex is what we known as we call as male and females, and gender is what they identify themselves to be. So in our subject we only deal about sex because gender becomes a personal choice. Okay, we cannot comment on that. Here we will only talk about sex. Now what are the different types of sex? First is phenotypic sex, which is based on our body's morphology, physical morphology. So nice of you, no? I'm writing for you. Huh? Chilling there, just listening. Huh? Rest are doing what? Writing or just listening? Or we'll just take a photo of what ma'am writes. Huh? And phenotypic, what else? Primary and secondary sexual characters. Basically the morphology of our body. Okay. Then we have what? We have nuclear sex, which we also call as this one, sex chromatins. Here we should know slightly about this thing, sex chromatin. Under this one we have the Barr bodies and we have the Davidson bodies. Okay, Barr bodies and Davidson bodies, these are the sex chromatins. These are found in the somatic cells, not only in female but also in male. These are nothing but Barr bodies are nothing but the X chromosome, which is, yes, excluded from the or just got not presented but present in our somatic cells. This is the Barr bodies. Okay, so this is sex chromatin or the nuclear sex. Then we have gonadal sex, and then we have chromosomal sex. Okay, chromosomal sex and gonadal sex. These are the basically types of sex. Then also we have something called the concealed sex. Now concealed sex has to do with the criminal mindset. It is about the intention. I'll explain to you. Concealed sex is revealed on examination only. What is a concealed sex? Somebody hides their identity. Okay, somebody is male, but they'll say they'll dress up as a female. Okay, they'll put on some wig or put a certain type of clothing that they look like a female. Suppose I'm a female person, I identify as a female person, but I dress in a certain way to make myself look like a male. So my concealed sex is what? Female. And what is my intention? My intention, it is all on the intention. Okay. For example, suppose somebody has a female morphology, okay, but that person says, no, I do not consider myself as a female person, I consider myself as a male person, so my gender becomes male. That person's intention is what? That person intention is not something to do with criminal mindset. That person intention is what? He cannot feel or she cannot feel that he is a specific type of a body. That's why he would come up and say that no, I'm not a female or I'm a male person, so I dress in a particular way to make myself feel like that. It is all about the intention. His intention or her intentions are not bad. But somebody who is dressed in a certain way to hide his criminal intentions, somebody commits a murder. okay, and the local people or somebody spots him or her, okay, a man goes and commits a murder or commits rape, okay, the locals there spots the man, and he can identify, he can go to the police and make a sketch done, get a sketch done of the offenser, and can identify, that person looks like this, he has a beard and he has certain type. No, he will do what, he'll come and he will conceal his sex, he'll dress in a certain manner so that people cannot identify him. Okay, now when he's a suspect, he when he comes under the police ka radar, the police then go and do what, call a doctor and then do the whole examination. On after examination, his real sex is revealed, and then it can be seen that he is exactly as the same person who has committed the crime. So it is concealed sex. So that person has concealed his sex so that he can get away with the crime that he has committed. So this is called concealed sex, which is only revealed at the time of examination, which is only revealed on examination. Okay, so this is called concealed sex. Apart from these types of 4 types of sex, concealed sex is also a type. Okay, now next what we have. Okay, next today this is just a briefing. Okay, so today our topic is mainly practical topic is we have 2 very simple bones. One is the skull and one is the mandible. Okay, so our task is that we will be asked in exam, you will given a pair of bones, okay, or a single bone maybe, and you will have to identify what is this bone, what is the age of this bone, what is the age of this person. From this bone you have to determine the age of the person, the sex of the person. Okay, from there you have to identify. For that purpose we are going to learn how we can identify the sex first, and in the upcoming classes we will also learn about the age determination from bony remains. Okay, so धीरे धीरे we will learn. So today 2 of our bones are skull and mandible. Next class we will learn pelvis and long bones. So talking about the age sex determination from the bones, what is the accuracy of sex determination from the bones? Like we have a skull and a femur, which is more accurate to determine the sex of the person. Like a skull is given or a femur is given, okay, which is more accurate? The skull is more accurate. So the skull has almost 90% of accuracy. The pelvis has 95% of accuracy. Long bones, especially the femur, have almost 80% of accuracy. And the whole bony skeleton combined has 100% of efficacy. Okay, like accuracy. Okay, so these are the accuracies. So our first bone that we are going to learn is skull. How to determine if this skull is a male or a female one. Okay, open this picture, all of you. Here you can follow. Okay, so this artificial specimen we cannot say this is a male or female one because this is a fake one, just built like that. We cannot say, but we'll try to understand. So follow these images. Okay. So always remember, when we have a male skull and when we have a female skull, the main purpose is everything is large and big and heavy and thick for the males, and everything is small and tiny and thin and rounder like for females. Okay, except for there are 2 exceptions which I'll tell you later, but basically almost 95% of the things are bigger and larger and thicker and heavier for the males and opposite for the females. Okay. So first we will start from the frontal part of the skull, from the front, and then we'll basically eventually go to the occipital part and the base of the skull. Okay. First is the male skull. If you look at the picture, the left hand side is the male one and the right hand side is the female one. Numbers are written 1179, or the picture A is the male one and the picture C is the female one. Okay. Can you appreciate? Yes. So you can see there's a difference in picture A and picture C. The male skull is a bit round, a bit bigger in shape compared to the female one? No? And more squarer in shape. And the female one is a bit rounder in shape. So our first point is the male skull will be larger in shape and the female skull will be a bit smaller in shape. The male skull will have what? Intercranial space larger and the female skull will have intercranial space smaller. Okay. The male skull will be longer in shape. Longer. You can see, no? The skull is a bit longer in shape. Picture A, a bit longer. And the female skull, the picture C, is a bit rounder in shape. No? A bit rounder. Female ones are rounder and male ones are elongated, longer in shape, larger and longer. And female ones are rounder and smaller with less intercranial spaces. Okay? Next we have the muscular mappings. All the muscular attachment, the muscle attachment everywhere in the male skull, it's very prominent. But in the female skull, it's less prominent. Okay, can you follow? All of you. The muscular markings of a male skull is more prominent and female skull is less prominent. Then we come to the forehead. Can you see at the lateral pictures of both the images A and C, the lateral picture, the male skull is a bit steeper, and the female one is more vertical. Can you see at the picture? The female one a bit vertical, like it's vertical. No? And the male one is steeper. Okay, now this, if I consider it as a female skull, it looks more like a female, sorry, it doesn't look like anything actually, but I don't know. The male one is a bit steeper, it's a bit steeper, and the female ones are vertical. It looks like more of a female one. It's a bit rounder and vertical. Okay, and the male ones are a bit steeper. The skulls are steeper. Okay, so these are the structure of the forehead. Then you can see, if you can comprehend very beautifully in this picture, it has been shown in the picture A, the supraorbital ridges. The supraorbital ridges are what? The eyebrows, our eyebrows, where the eyebrows are. Don't you have a picture? Okay. The supraorbital ridges in the male skull are more prominent. Can you see? But in the female skull, these are less prominent, the supraorbital ridges. Everything is more prominent and larger and everything in the female one, and lesser and less prominent and smaller in the female one. So from the supraorbital ridges, you can clearly see this is more bulging and more prominent compared to the female one. Then from the supraorbital ridges, we come to the what? We come to glabella. This is a glabella. You know now, this is the glabella. From anatomy, you can know. This is called the glabella, where girls wear bindi. Okay, this is the glabella point. So the glabella, it is more protruded in the male one and less protruded in the female one. In the lateral picture of picture A, left hand side, the picture B, it is a lateral one of the male skull. The picture B, you can see the glabella easily protruded. Very beautifully it has been shown here. The glabella being very much protruded in the male one. And in picture D, which is the lateral picture of the female skull, the glabella is less protruded in case of the female skull. Okay, so supraorbital ridges are complete, glabella is complete. Now next point will come to the frontonasal junction. This is this point, the frontonasal junction. Okay, the frontonasal junction is less deeper in case of male skull. Okay, it's less deeper in case of male skull and it's more deeper in case of female skull. It's just a very easy difference. Okay, if you have the real bone, you can easily comprehend in the real ones, but since we don't have the real bones yet, so you just have to learn and know and see the picture. When we have the real bones, we will come. You will come to the department. We will have a schedule and we will show you on the real ones as well, so that you can know and identify from a real bone the gender, the sex and the age, everything. But since we don't have the bones now, so please try to follow from the picture itself. Okay. For the frontal, we have the supraorbital ridges. We have seen the glabella. We have seen the frontonasal junction, which is less deeper in case of the males and more deeper in case of females. Now we have what? Now we come to the orbits. Okay, from upper to lower. Now we come to the orbits. Now in case of male skull, the orbits are more square in shape. If you see the picture, you will know. The male skull orbits are squarer in shape and the female skull orbits are rounder in shape. In comparison of the male skull, the orbits are a bit smaller in size. But in comparison with the female skull, the orbits are more larger in size. Understood? You know, we generally, what do we say? No, it doesn't make any sense, just for your understanding and so that you can remember I'm telling you. We say, no, the girls have big eyes compared to boys. So orbit of the female skull are bit larger compared to the female skull, and orbit of the male skull are bit smaller compared to the male skull. Okay. So shape of the orbit in male skull are what? Square, and shape of orbit in female skull are what? Round. Okay. Just like that, the shape of the male skull is also elongated and female skull is round. No, orbits are also same, square and round. Okay. Next we have what? After orbits we have what? Our nasal apparatus. Okay. Now as you can see in the picture, the nasal apparatus are bit higher in position in case of the male skull. As it is elongated, the skull is elongated, the nasal apparatus is situated a bit higher in position. And in case of the female skull, the nasal apparatus are smaller and situated a bit lower in position. Okay. Now we have completed the nasal apparatus as well. Next our is what? The palate. Okay. In case of the male skull, the palate is larger and rounder in shape. This is nothing, I think, this is not larger but rounder in shape, this palate. Okay. This is not large but this is round. Since it's an artificial one, so you won't find anything to connect with, but I'm still showing you. This is the palate we are talking about, and this will be round and larger in case of male ones, and in case of female ones this will be smaller and parabolic in shape. Okay, you have read about parabola and hyperbola in maths, no? In maths you have solved these cases. What is a parabola, what is a hyperbola? So parabola shape is what? How does a parabola look like? Yes, so a female palate is parabolic in shape and smaller in shape, and a male palate is larger in shape and rounder in shape. Okay. Next after palate we have our zygomatic arc. Now what is a zygomatic arc? The chin. Yes, the chin is our zygomatic arc. Again, the zygomatic arc in the male one are more prominent and the female ones are less prominent. Okay. Then we have mastoid process. What is the mastoid process? Yes, behind our ear. This is the mastoid process, which is more larger and pointed in case of the male ones and smaller and less pointed in case of female ones. Next we have external occipital protuberance. What is the external occipital protuberance? Yes, here at our occiput. Okay, at our occipital region. So this is the external occipital protuberance, which is more prominent in case of the male ones and less prominent in case of the female ones. Now all this topic that we have read till now, everything is more prominent and larger and everything in case of the males, and smaller and less prominent and everything in case of females. No, but there are two exceptions. Okay, there are two eminences. What are the eminences? The frontal eminence and the parietal eminence. So this is the frontal eminence and this is the parietal eminence. Frontal eminence and parietal eminence. Parietal eminence. Okay, the frontal eminence and parietal eminence are more prominent in case of male skull and less prominent in case of female ones. Okay, clear? No? Differences between a male and a female skull. Okay, so I'll repeat the points for all of you. Please make a note. Starting now, you repeat with me. Okay, starting from where we start? From where we start? From generally looking at the shape and structure. So we will first look at the shape and structure, which is larger in case of males and smaller in case of females. Intercranial capacity, then we look at loudly, you can say. Intercranial capacity is larger in males and smaller in females. Then we have we start from the forehead. Okay, then we have the forehead. The forehead is what? In case of males, steeper, and in case of females, vertical. Okay. Then after forehead, what we have? After forehead, then we come here at the supraorbital ridges. Top to bottom we will cover. Supraorbital ridges are more prominent in males and less prominent in females. What about the muscle markings? Muscle markings are more prominent in males and less prominent in females. Yes. Next, after the supraorbital ridges and muscle markings, next what we have? Glabella. What about the glabella? It's more protruded. In the lateral image you can see it's more protruded in case of males and less protruded in case of females. Yes. Then after glabella what do we have? Frontonasal joint. We have frontonasal joint. Frontonasal joint is what? Less deeper in case of males and more deeper in case of females. Yes. After frontonasal joints, then where do we come to? Orbits. Orbits are what? Square shaped and smaller compared to the skull. And in case of females, round and larger compared to the face. No, sorry, skull. Done. Next, after orbits, where do we come to? Nasal apparatus. Nasal apparatus is what? In case of males, higher in position or higher situated. Higher in position in case of males and lower in position in case of females. Okay. Then after nasal apparatus, what do we have? Zygomatic arch. No, we have palate. Palate. Palate is what? Palate is rounder and larger in case of males and smaller and parabolic in case of females. Then after palate we have zygomatic arch, which is more prominent and less prominent. Then after zygomatic arch what we have? Mastoid process. Mastoid process is more pointed. More pointed in case of males and larger and more pointed and smaller and less pointed. Once we have the new bones, we have already given the order. Once we have the real bones, then we'll have another class to show you how the real bones look like. Okay. Then after mastoid process, what else do we have? External occipital protuberance. More prominent and less prominent in? It's very easy. More prominent, less prominent, larger, smaller. That's it. Just you have to remember the points, which I have told you very easily. You can remember starting from the forehead, ending to the this one. External occipital protuberance. Then what? Another one is left. That is the foramen magnum. What is the foramen magnum? This one. No, foramen magnum. All the important nerves and everything passes through it. Foramen magnum is more rounder and larger in case of males and smaller round, both are round only in case of females. Okay. Are you sleepy? I'm that bad of a teacher. Then my God, I couldn't keep you engaged. I'm so sorry. Then how is it? You wish to go out and spill some water? My God, I didn't know I'm that bad of a teacher. Oh God, you all are feeling so bored, Okay. We used to sleep at classes, those we don't like. Those we didn't like back then when I was in college. My class is only not interesting enough. What can I do? I gave my best efforts to teach you. Isn't it? Huh?
Understood the class,
But what? Okay. The next bone we have mandible. Okay. Now mandible we have very limited topics, small headings. Okay. 3 or 4 topics. That's it. Mandible. Small bone. No need to much. Like there's no point that we need to know.
female it is rounded, male it is
What?
mandible.
Mandible. What is rounded and what is square?
The chin area.
Angle is rounded and angle is square.
The chin.
The chin, yes. We hold the chin like that, and if it's rounded in shape, it's female, and if it's square in shape, it's male. Okay. Then the next important that we need to know is the angle of the mandible, which is less obtuse in case of male, like less than 125 degrees, and more obtuse and more than 125 degrees in case of females. Then we also have an angle over here, which is also called the medico-legal angle. We don't need this angle in case of sex determination. We definitely need it when we determine the age. Okay, it's different in case of infants and newborns and in adults. Okay, for age determination we need this angle, which is the medico-legal angle. This is the this one, angle of mandible, which we need for sex determination, and it's less obtuse in case of males and more obtuse in case of females, like 125 degrees, less than 125 degrees in case of males and more than 125 degrees in case of females. That's it. And the shape and the angle of mandible, and this one, body of the ascending ramus, the body is larger and the height is also big in case of males, and the body is smaller and the height is also less in case of females. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's it for the mandibles. Now, first of all, a male one will be a more thicker and a more heavier, and a more, yes, and the female one will be lighter and thinner. Okay. Male one will be thicker and the female will be thinner and lighter. Less than 125 degrees angle of mandible, more than 125 degree angle of mandible. Shape of chin, the chin will be what? Square in case of male and round in case of females. Yeah, that's it about the mandible. Okay. Yeah, so these are the 2 bones that we have covered. So quickly, can we revise all about the identification? You tell me, I'll listen now. Starting, what is identification? What? Determining the individuality of a person. Yes. What are the different types of identification? No, these are parameters. Different types are absolute and partial. Yes, partial when we already know about something, we don't have the complete information, and complete is what knowing everything, name and everything we know. Okay. Now parameters are what? Parameters are presumptive and definitive. Presumptive we have sex, age, race, and stature and age. Okay. And definitive we have dactylography, DNA fingerprinting, tattoo, birthmark. So superimposition is also there. Okay, and then the main sex identification. So what are the various types of sex? Phenotypic sex, gonadal sex, chromosomal sex, and nuclear sex. Okay, in nuclear sex we have read slightly about the Barr bodies and the Davidson bodies. Okay, so what is the accuracy of sex determination to the bony remains? Yes, 90% from the skulls, 95% from the pelvis, and 80% from the long bones, and combined from the whole skeleton we can know 100% about the sex. Okay, and then straight away we skip to the skull and mandible. So the points, everything we know except for the frontal and parietal eminence, everything is more for the male one and less for the female one, starting from the shape and structure, and from the forehead, which is vertical and steeper, and from the supraorbital notches, the muscular markings, the glabella, the this one, frontonasal junction, the zygomatic arch, the palate, the orbits, the nasal apparatus, the foramen magnum, the external occipital protuberances, everything. Okay, so by now I think you all have learned about the every point. No, by heart you have learned about it. Okay, palate. Okay, so about the mandible, 2 or 3 points are there: the angle of the mandible, the shape of the chin, the overall size and shape. So that is it all about. Okay, and the height of the ascending body of the ramus, which is more in males and less in females. Okay, so that's all about the skull and mandible. Understood?